Thank you, Dr. Hickey. And thank you, Gianna, for that lovely introduction. You stole some of my thunder, but it's great to experience an Austin student expressing some very insightful wisdom about Augustine. I'd like to make one correction. I'm not on sabbatical, and I'm not getting paid. I'm retired after 50 years at Merrimack College. I have to say, and I want to begin with how blessed and privileged I feel to be part of your community, of the Austin Prep community. I've been telling my friends and former colleagues at Merrimack College how deeply impressed I am with the quality and the ability of you students, and by the dynamism and dedication of your faculty. And also how impressed I've been with the caring community I've witnessed at Austin here. St. Augustine would be proud that a school that bears his name has such a powerful example of what a Christian community should be. So thank you for the warm welcome you've given me. So let's begin again with his words. You have made us for yourself, O Lord. So this sentence, which you repeat so often, is found at the very beginning, the very first page of his classic work, The Confessions. We repeat it daily here at Austin, but it is known widely around the globe, actually. In fact, it's one of the most famous religious sayings of all time. All of the great religions of the world affirm its wisdom and admire its truth. Because in this one sentence, Augustine sums up the origin, the meaning, and the purpose of human life. So I'm taking the opportunity of the St. Augustine Lecture this year to reflect on these words that are so familiar to you, to scrutinize their significance and examine their intention so we can get a little deeper understanding of the sentence. I will tell you there are many philosophers and theologians who have written whole books about these words, why Augustine wrote them, what he meant by them, and why we are still repeating them 16 centuries later. But today, I would like to draw your attention to just 3 words in this sentence. The words are restless, rest, and until. These words will help us, I think, come to a deeper understanding of the whole sentence. There's a little Latin for you students who are taking Latin. That's the sentence in Latin. So let's begin with restless. The first word is the adjective restless. Augustine, as you know, wrote in Latin. That was his language. Mr. Rousseau and Father Patrick will tell you that the word we translate into English as restless is the Latin word inquietum, literally unquiet. Our heart is unquiet. What did Augustine mean by describing the human heart as inquietum, unquiet or restless? And inquietum in Latin can also mean unsettled, distracted, out of sorts. I think we all know what Augustine meant when he described the human heart as inquietum, because we've all felt it. At one time or another, all of us have hearts that were unquiet, restless, distracted, out of sorts. Sometimes our restlessness is outside of us. Too much going on around us. Too many demands made on us. Too many expectations coming at us from every direction. Too many responsibilities put on us by our parents, our teachers, our friends, our families, our jobs, or the world in general. You students have many more demands, expectations, and responsibilities than previous generations. Your teachers, you should know, often talk about this and about how they can help you navigate all of these responsibilities, all this restlessness that is around you. You also have to deal with the constant summons of social media, the relentless siren of your screens, cell phones, tablets, computer screens, all vying for your attention, soliciting your response, wanting your like. When your parents and your teachers were that age, they didn't have to deal with all the ways that media has of intensifying and magnifying the restlessness outside of us. When your grandparents and your really old teachers here at Augustine were your age, they could not have imagined the world that you live in and have to deal with. All of this external restlessness outside of us can eat its way inside of us. From outside, it can invade our heart, distract our mind, rattle our brain, and so become internal restlessness. External restlessness can leave our internal heart unquiet, inquietum, skipping beats, out of rhythm with who we want to be or who we are. Augustine himself admits on the very first page of his life story, of his Confessions, that he often felt this way. Sure, there were no computers to deal with. There wasn't even any electricity, no phones to distract him. But his world of the late Roman Empire had its own set of expectations and demands and responsibilities that had assaulted his mind and invaded his heart and left him anxious, a heart racing, unsettled, unquiet, inquietum. The second word in the sentence I'd like to draw your attention to is related to the first. It is the verb to rest. Our heart is restless until it rests in you. In Latin, to rest is the verb quiescere, and there is the related Latin noun quies or requies. Quiet, peace, serenity, calm, stillness, tranquility. What did Augustine see in this word quies or requies that was so important for him, so essential for being human? Of course, we know we need sleep, rest in that sense. And social psychologists are telling us how really important that is for folks your age. But he also knew the importance of quiet, of peace and quiet that we need. Sometimes we just have to get away from it all, away from all those external demands and distractions. We need to escape all the expectations and the judgments outside of us so that we can tend to and focus on the restlessness inside. We need that kind of rest too. Augustine himself, this is a picture of one of the places Augustine actually went to at a time in his life when he had too much going on outside of himself. He had just separated from the woman who was the mother of his son. He had just quit his job. He had people clamoring to get the job he had just quit. He was thinking of becoming a Christian. It was just too much going on outside of himself, and it had eaten into his heart. So he left the city of Milan in northern Italy, where he was working in the court of the Roman Empire, for the little town of Cassisiacum. And that's a picture of the town. More buildings, but it's very similar to what it was in Augustine's day. He tells us he often had to get away from the noisy, busy city where he was bishop of Hippo later, where people were always seeking him out, asking for help, making demands on his time and energy. He didn't have email, but we know that hundreds, perhaps thousands of letters landed on his desk in North Africa, seeking his response, requesting his like of their ideas and their opinions. Sometimes, he tells us, he just had to get away from it all to find requies, rest. The one thing I hope you take away with you today is that you also need to do that. We should do the same. We all need to identify and visit the quiet places that restore a healthy rhythm to our restless heart. Find peaceful places where we can think more clearly, love more dearly, and follow more nearly the promptings of God who is within us. We all do that in different ways. We all have different kinds of places and spaces that afford us peace and quiet. Augustine's message and my hope for you is that don't ignore those places. Visit them regularly. Allow yourselves some rest. However, and this is important, rest, or requies for Augustine, did not just mean escape, getting away from everything. That's part of it. But it was not just passive withdrawal from the world. In an Augustinian understanding, getting away is not just dropping out and shutting down. We may need to do that for a while. We may need just to waste some time for ourselves, to catch our breath, to release the tension in our muscles, to relieve the pressures on our brain. But ultimately, Augustine understood rest as an active state. Peace and quiet set the stage for what we might call creative rest. Creative rest consists in three dynamics, three activities that are essential for our minds and hearts, three important supplements, if you will, for the soul. They are reflection, relationship, and reform. Are they going up? There we go. I got to connect with the... Let's talk about these for a few moments to come to a better understanding of what Augustine meant by requies, or rest. Rest gives us time to sort things out, to stop and think about things, to put the demands and expectations and distractions aside for a while, to consider them from a distance, to take a look at them from the perspective afforded by restful time and space. Now, we all reflect in different ways. For some, it helps to write. Augustine himself reflected on things by writing about them. You know, we have about 5 million words he wrote. That's more than any author in any language in history. He didn't have an unpublished thought. But that's how he rested, in a sense, by writing. Many of his books can be understood as long reflections on how to sort things out for himself or to help other people sort things out. When we read them, we hear him. We hear his brain working, reflecting, trying to make sense of life, its meaning and purpose, or to help other people do that. Late in his life, in one of the last books he wrote, he says these interesting words, "I think I made progress as I wrote." I think I made progress as I wrote. Writing helped me to sort things out. Now, when you write a reflection for the Deodatus experience, for example, or when you do creative writing for your English classes or other classes, this writing helps you progress. It's not just an exercise, not just homework. It helps you as a person progress, move on. You too make progress as you write. Not just progress in how to write, but a progress in how to think, how to live, and how to love. Many people also reflect through art. Brother Blair helps his students develop the practice of painting, of writing icons, of reflecting through directed, intentional, restful activity that seeks beauty and form. You make progress as you draw, as you paint, as you create beauty. The same is true of music. Playing an instrument, singing solo or in concert with Dr. McCormack, or dancing in recitals. These activities invite inner reflection while you engage in them, as you become one with the music. You progress as a person as you sing and dance. For others, sports and exercise promote reflection. The challenge and the exhilaration of practice or of the game can lead the athlete with the guidance of their coaches to inner reflections. At Merrimack College, one of my dear friends from many years ago, a student I had in class from Quebec, Canada, was the goalie for Merrimack's superb hockey team. And when he arrived at Merrimack, he spoke hardly any English. He was French-Canadian. So he struggled. He really worked hard and became a good student and an excellent hockey player, an excellent goalie. And he was one of those people who reflected by talking. So in those years I was living in the dorm, he would come to my room at night, and when he was homesick, he would talk about that. But he talked about his philosophy of being a hockey goalie. And he said, I'll never forget this, he said one night, "It is like ballet." I had never expected that from a hockey player. He said, "I dance when I tend goal, and I meditate." He would meditate before the game, and he would meditate after the game, reflecting on how he had done. But for him, his sport was a way of going within. It was a type of rest. I'll never forget that. I know many runners who find their time running gives them a lot of restful time. Even though they're exercising, they're experiencing internal rest as they reflect on ideas that they're trying to process, on thoughts that they've had. And finally, we can rest simply by talking, as my friend Gilles Moffat did many years ago. Talking through things with friends that you trust, your coaches, your mentors, who are kind enough to join you in your place of rest. Conversation deepens reflection. Okay, relationship. In addition to reflection, rest is a time that prizes relationship. When we really slow down, get quiet, and allow ourselves to rest, we begin to realize that we're not alone. Rest provides us the opportunity to reflect on our relationship with God. God is always with us, but we can lose sight of that amidst all the noise and all the demands that are put on us. We can lose sight of that. We can lose sight of God's presence because of all the noise inside of us as well. Rest invites silence so we can hear the quiet, gentle voice of God whispering within our souls. Rest also helps us reflect on our relationship with others. With others. Here we go. With our families and friends. When we rest, we make space for them. So often our loved ones get crowded out by the demands that are put on us, or they get outshouted by the restlessness that we feel within ourselves. And finally, rest also helps us reflect on our relationship with ourself. Just like we can lose touch with God and other people, we can lose touch with ourselves when we forget our own strength. If we are too often unquiet, restless, distracted, all of our relationships suffer. Rest restores relationship. The final thing that is part of creative rest is reform. In addition to allowing time for reflection and healing relationships, rest also helps us to reform, that is, to change. One of Augustine's constant messages is that God is always with us, always working, stirring, creating, and recreating inside of us. The Spirit of God moves constantly over our souls, just as the way the Spirit moved over the abyss of waters in the first book of Genesis. We call this dynamic presence of God within us grace. Times of rest allow us to sense, to feel, to intuit the power of God's grace. Often it will be felt as a gentle call to reform, to revise in little ways how we live, how we relate to others, how we appreciate ourselves. In the quiet time and space of rest, we can detect these little gestures of the divine and discern the gentle nudging of God who is always inviting us to new ways of acting, new ways of being. Rest recreates, reforms, and reforms our hearts. The third word, until. It's a preposition. Now, your English teachers will tell you that prepositions are those pesky little words that pop in and out of our sentences. I call them the little minions of the grammar world. They're rushing to and fro, pushing nouns and verbs out of the way to make their point. But they're important. They indicate direction, location, or time, or with great bravado, they will introduce an object or a whole subjunctive clause. The preposition in Augustine's sentence is the word until they rest in you. It's, as Father Patrick and Mr. Russo will tell you, it's a funny little word in Latin. It's the word donec. Those of you who study or speak Spanish, hasta. In French, jusqu'à. And in Portuguese, for our Brazilian friends, ate. And I cannot pronounce the Chinese, the Mandarin. But in any language, this preposition, until, signals movement, going forward, heading out, surging forward in a direction. It also necessarily implies incompleteness, something in process, and maybe even sometimes in peril, on the way, but not yet there. Augustine understood our life in this world as a journey. He once wrote to a friend who had to leave her home in Rome and sail across the Mediterranean Sea for the safety of North Africa, where Augustine now lived. There was political turmoil in Italy. The Visigoth tribes had just invaded and sacked the city of Rome. Her name was Proba, and thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of other Romans had to flee the city for their lives. They became immigrants, and many ended up homeless in Augustine's city of Hippo in North Africa. Augustine reached out to Proba. We still have the letter that he wrote to her. He reminded her that really everyone in this world is an immigrant. We are all displaced persons, homeless yet hopeful, moving on to a new land, donec, until, going toward something better, on the way, but not yet there. Augustine understood faith as a pilgrimage, a passage of hope and love made in the company of others on the way to a distant land where finally we will belong and no one will be a displaced person until we rest in you. Nine days ago, Pope Francis passed away, as you know. On Easter Monday, he received his Easter gift from God. After 12 years of loving service to the universal church and to the world, he crossed over and through until, to arrive finally at rest in God. His restless heart now rests in God. Another preposition we could talk about, in. As for any family or community that suffers the loss of a loved one, Pope Francis's death leaves the church restless. And this restlessness of the church has both an external and an internal dimension. The heart of the universal church is restless within itself. We have lost our leader. That loss can leave us unsettled, unquiet, out of sorts, distracted, and maybe even worried about the future. The loss of Pope Francis is also external to the church. The Pope is not only the pastor of the universal church, he is also a worldwide leader. Hundreds of millions of people, Christian and many others of different religions, languages, and cultures, they look to the Pope for moral example and guidance and leadership. In many ways, the Pope has become a stable and stabilizing figure in world history. So it's disquieting. It creates a certain restlessness in the world to lose such a moral leader when so much of the world is in turmoil, restless, at odds, and at war. During this time of restlessness in our hearts and in the church, we should heed Augustine's advice and practice the three dynamics of creative rest. We must be reflective. Even as we gather this morning here at Austin, you know, the cardinals have gathered in Rome, 135 of them, including my Augustinian friend, Cardinal Robert Prevost, whose name keeps popping up as a possible pope. He would be the first American pope, if that were to happen. But the cardinals are praying. They have a tremendous responsibility on their shoulders. They're preparing for the conclave, the meeting where they get together in the Sistine Chapel and elect the new pope. Begins 1 week from today. We have a responsibility to pray for them and with them. The cardinals are also coming to know each other. We assume that because they're all cardinals, they know each other. They really don't. Many of them are from all around the world. So in this time of reflection, of creative rest, they need to restore relationships or to develop new relationships. They need to come to know each other better. They need to restore and maybe heal relationships among them that may have been strained by the challenges in the church or stressed by the political and economic problems around the world, because they come from all over the world. So we too, at this uncertain time, should reflect on our relationships, both with fellow Catholics, with other Christians, and with all people. How can we, as Pope Francis often encouraged us, treat everyone with compassion and respect and forgiveness? Finally, whomever the cardinals elect as the new pope, we're all going to feel the challenge of change. A new papacy is always a time of significant change in the church and in the world. But remember Augustine's message, God is always with us, reforming, within our souls and within the soul of the church. The Holy Spirit is within the church, working within and among its people and its leaders. The church is at a moment of change, of restlessness and uncertainty. And to conclude, I know that some of you in your own personal lives may also be going through inner turmoil, inner restlessness. I think especially of the seniors. This is a time of great excitement, of joy, of gratitude. But mixed in with all those good feelings, there might be some inquietum, some restlessness inside of you, because you're about to go through one of the most significant changes in your lives. For 50 years, I welcomed new students at Merrimack College, the freshmen, as many of you will be in a few months. And you're in a whole new world, a whole new land, a whole new territory. There are prepositions popping up all around you, pushing you this way and that. It can be overwhelming, and you're probably feeling some of that now. So, seniors, allow yourselves some time for creative rest, when you can reflect on what's going on, not only around you, but what's going on inside of you. Time when you can thank all of the people and thank God for the benefits you've reached at this point in your life. Time when you can ask the Holy Spirit to recreate you, to create a new you that will be ready for the new life, wherever life takes you beyond Austin. So in one simple but profound sentence, St. Augustine reminds us all of the promise of God's healing, God's grace, and God's love. So I think the best way to end is with those words. You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. Amen. That's my shtick.
Do a little Q&A. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a little liberty here. I appreciate Dr. Kelley's insights into the statement that we use and say all the time. One of the things that occurred to me as I was sitting there, like the restlessness, sometimes it's as simply as, like, as human beings, we never have enough, or we always want more. And sometimes that happens just after we get exactly what we wanted. And maybe a good example or a timely example or wherever it is in your life. Think of a cell phone. Some of you have cell phones that are a few years old. Your parents have said, make the best of it. But you're always thinking about, I shouldn't say you always are, but you may often think about, can I get a new cell phone? And then you get to that point where you get the new cell phone. It's the iPhone 16. And your parents bought you the iPhone 16 Pro for your birthday or some other holiday. And just as you're opening the box, the thought enters your mind, why couldn't they give me the iPhone 16 Pro Max? Right? It happens to all of us. Those are the thoughts that I think St. Augustine was talking about. Human beings are always on the go. We always want more. We're always thinking. That's the restlessness. So, that's a way, as I said, it's a thought that came to me as I was sitting there listening to Dr. Kelley's insights. I mentioned at the outset we have just a little time for question and answer. Who's got the microphone? Who's going with it? Sister Maria. Okay, sister, take it.
At this time, we transition into our Q&A session. But before we do that, please join me to give a warm round of applause to Dr. Kelley. Dr. Kelley, we have 5 students who will be asking a few questions, and each one of them will introduce themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelley, for being here today. My name is Olivia Bizon, and I am in 8th grade. My question for you is, why did St. Augustine write those words at the beginning of his book, Confessions?
So he wrote Confessions when he was about 44 years old. He had been a priest at this point for about 9-10 years, and a bishop for about 5 years. So people were asking him, hey, weren't you the guy who was a member of another religion and you made fun of Catholic Christians, and how did you end up being our bishop? Let's see your resume. So in response to that, and also in response to, as he said, I made progress as I wrote, he's really starting to look back over his life and all of the various things that had happened to him. And I think as he started reviewing his life, which, by the way, seniors, is a good thing to do as you leave Austin, do a little life review. Look back on what was good, what could I have done differently, and so forth. And that's where he discovers, he says, wow, I've been restless in so many different ways, and I continue to be restless. So really the rest of his book, Confessions, which goes on for another 200 pages or so, he explores how that applied to his own life. So I think that's why he has it at the beginning of Confessions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia.
Good morning, Dr. Kelley. Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Gabriella Gill, and I'm in 9th grade. Now, my question for you is, do adults and older people feel the same pressure from social media that students do?
Well, obviously, Dr. Hickey does, because he just talked about... Are your kids asking you for those new cell phones? Yeah. I would like to say no. We're above all of that. But I've gotten addicted to YouTube. My wife has, Instagram. So we're driving along in the car, and she, one Instagram thing after another drives me crazy. So I bought her earbuds, so she always forgets them when we get into the car, so I don't have to listen to it. So she, in fact, one of our granddaughter, who's 8 years old, one day said to her, Grandma, you're addicted to that. So I think the answer to your question is yes, we can get pulled into it. And you know that the people who designed all of these social media programs, they included psychologists and neuroscientists and all these experts to find out what's the best way to get into your brain and manipulate your brain. So it's more a part of your culture. We didn't grow up with that. But yes, we can get addicted. And I will be honest, when I try to find times of rest for myself, to turn that phone off and put it away, it's hard. Sister Maria maybe won something from me, and I found it. Here's an example. I was driving here this morning, and I shouldn't have, but I looked at my phone while I was driving, and there was a text from Sister Maria. I said, oh, I got to answer that. So yes, we can, and we have to be careful about it.
Thank you, Dr. Kelley. My name is Charlie Hickey, and I'm in 10th grade. My question for you is,
Are you the one who's demanding a new phone?
What?
Never mind. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that was me. My question for you is, how do you find time and space for rest in your life?
Okay. Sometimes I don't. It's easy for me to write these nice words, but do I practice what I preach? I try to. A friend of mine told me once about her practice. She calls it coffee with God. She's very busy. She's mother of a large family, now a grandparent, as a high school teacher. So sometimes the only quiet time in the day is when she's up in the morning, before everything else happens. She sits down with a cup of coffee, and she calls it coffee with God. That's her time for prayer. And can you pray while you're drinking coffee? Well, you can drink coffee while you're praying, right? So I've actually started trying that. What I try to do is find some time in the morning and some time in the evening to kind of bookend the day. I find when I do that, the rest of the day is so much less frenetic. But it can be hard. You know, you get up too late, you rush, you get in the car, and all of a sudden you're fighting traffic, and to find those times is important. And then sometimes I know I need a whole afternoon, or I just go to the beach, walk quietly, or we have a lovely park near where I live. I try to do that. And I find if I don't, the restlessness, it's like a hurricane. It just intensifies to a category 5. And I'm not only restless, I'm useless. So I try on a daily basis, twice a day. Sometimes it's just a few minutes in the morning and in the evening. Sometimes it's longer, but it makes a huge difference. Some of you might be aware of mindfulness meditation. It's a way of calming down. That can be very helpful too.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brooke Boyka. I'm in the 11th grade. Thank you so much for coming. My question is, what do you think is the best way for people to reflect?
The best way is what works for you. As I said, I don't know if any of you know David McGilvery. David was a student of mine at Merrimack many years ago. He's managed the Boston Marathon for many years now. And for him, that's the best. He's 70 years old now. He runs 20 miles a day. That's his time to reflect. He's always been a runner. That's his time to reflect. That's the best for him. Those of you who are musicians or dancers or hockey goalies, you're all going to find it in different ways. Sometimes the most peaceful moments for me were looking at my granddaughters when they were infants. Just sitting there in the presence of new life and the beauty of new life. I did that, and now I reflect on having done it. So just those peaceful thoughts that come to you, don't dismiss them. They're so valuable, but it's different for everyone. My dad, he was a mechanic, but he also was a very good carpenter. And working with wood, that's what relaxed him. Making cabinets. I remember as a kid watching him. Dad, why are you doing that? And he said, well, it helped him get away from us kids. But it was a really relaxing time. So it's different for everyone. The key is to find out what works for you and then embrace it. Do it. Just do it.
Thank you.
Is that it? How are we doing? One more question?
Thank you, Dr. Kelley, for being with us today. My name is Owen Brown, and I'm a senior. And my question for you is, who do you think the next pope will be?
I have no idea. Of course, a lot of people. I have my friend Bob Prevost as an Augustinian. I've known him for many, many years, and when he spent most of his priesthood in South America, in Peru, working in remote villages and mountains. He used to ride a donkey to some of the villages where even Land Rovers couldn't get to. He met Pope Francis before Pope Francis became Pope Francis. They were working together in South America. So they've been friends for many years. Eventually, Pope Francis made him a bishop and then a cardinal, and he worked with the Pope in helping to choose new bishops. So his name is popping up. I wouldn't wish it on him. It's a killer of a job. I mean, they call, after the new pope is elected, they take him to this little room that's off the Sistine Chapel, and it's called the Room of Tears. The Room of Tears, Sala de Lacrime, because this person, whoever's elected, their whole life now has to be dedicated to this mission. It's very challenging. So I don't know if Bob. An American has never been elected pope. Bob is identified mostly as a South American because he spent all of his priesthood either in Peru or in Italy. But the cardinals need to do one important thing. They need to think about what are the needs of the church. What does the universal church need? You know, only 6% of the whatever it is, how many Catholics are there? 1.4 billion. Only 6% of them are from the United States, us. We're a very small percentage of the Catholic Church. So as a truly worldwide organization, the cardinals have to discern what are the needs of this community, of the Church of Christ. What are the needs? That's really hard. That's what they're thinking now about and praying now. So I have confidence that they will discern the needs of the worldwide church and say, all right, who can best fulfill that? Father Patrick's name has been floated occasionally, but I don't think so because Austin needs him too much, right? Other than that, honestly, I don't know. We can take some bets. We could start not March Madness, but May Madness and put some. Okay. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it.
This concludes our Q&A session. Let's give another round of applause to Dr. Kelley and to our 5 students.